Right, I'm going to very briefly just talk you through an example of a unit and how we use the technology throughout that particular unit. We use technology in our school in various different ways, and this is just one example, but hopefully it'll put things into context and just show how we make sure that technology doesn't drive the unit, and it augments it and enhances it and makes it better for having the technology. So this particular unit is called Personal Artifact. We did this with Year 8, and it's really all about inquiry and helping students to become better at running an inquiry, at research, at asking questions themselves, being independent, the way that they look at the reliability of their research, and then being articulate in presenting those findings to somebody else. So I'll talk about the technology in a second or two. I'll just give a very brief overview of the unit. So the first phase is students choose an artifact that means something to them. So we model this by bringing in our own artifact. In my case, I brought in a ship's wheel. And this was an interesting artifact to me because my father-in-law found it when he lived in Sierra Leone. They were traveling up a river. They found an abandoned warship, which actually turned out to be from Russia. And they basically pinched this wheel from that warship, and it's gradually worked its way through the family and ended up in our house. And that artifact there can lead to a whole range of inquiry strands, and there's a whole host of questions that could be asked about it and researched. We could look at Sierra Leone as a country. That could lead us to explore things like the diamond trade. We could look at the military and why was there a Russian warship in the middle of Sierra Leone. We could look at stuff like agriculture because my father-in-law was there as an agricultural engineer. So there's so many directions that one artifact could take me in. So we model that, and then students do the same thing with an artifact that they bring in. Whether that's something like a prize that they've won, a trophy that they've won for something. It could be medals that have been passed down from a grandfather or a great-grandfather. It's whatever they choose to bring in, really. In the explore phase, they then start asking questions. This is a bit where they ask questions about that artifact and start to explore it. They come up with a big question for their inquiry, and they start to come up with sub-questions that they can research. They then look at the research that they've found, and they try to make sense of it. What does it tell them? What have they actually found out? What's useful? What's reliable? How do they know? And they might even decide at that stage they're going to go back and refine their research and try and do a little bit more. They might even change their questions, having done that. Once they've done that and they've got the research, they then decide what do they want to share with other people. So they make a product to articulate the findings of their research that they can present and they can then talk about. Part of that is asking people for feedback and remaking it. So this process, they might do 3 or 4 drafts before they get to the final product. And the emphasis here is on coming up with something that's really high quality, that's well explained, and really gets beneath the surface of the stuff that they've managed to find out. And then the final part is actually showing their product to an audience and telling people about it. So this is how the technology fit in to that project. The dream phase was all about them bringing in their artifact. But once they got onto the explore phase, there was a whole raft of tools which were useful to them. So the learning wall was probably the key tool that we used. This is something we developed ourselves, and we gave them things like the Kipling questions to ask questions about their artifact, to think about it from different perspectives. We made the question dice, which gives them question stems to, again, help them come up with different questions. The thinking hats allowed students to think about their artifact from different perspectives so that their research was wider than just finding out the facts. And obviously Google was useful for research. We taught them how to use things like the advanced search and the research tool in Google Docs effectively. And many of the students decided to record their findings using Evernote. When they got into the map stage, the learning wall was again very useful because we have a bunch of graphic organizers on there. And we taught students how to use some of these so that they could use them to compare and contrast their findings, to filter down to just the important information, to consider reliability and things like that. There were various other tools. I'm not going to talk through everything that we used in every stage. In the make stage, we used cameras very, very heavily on the tablets. And even with the Chromebooks, if you use Chromebooks instead of tablets, just having the webcam can still allow you to capture evidence of work as it progresses. So this allowed us to get pictures of prototypes and ideas. We put them in the ask phase on the class blog. Every class has their own blog in the school. And this allowed other students and staff to give them feedback to help improve those. We used things like our literacy and VCOP wall for any written work that we're doing as part of those products to help make sure that their writing was as good as it could be and to give support with that. And we used things like the calendar to help them keep track of what tasks they wanted to do and their deadlines, because we tried to give as much independence as we could there. In the ask phase, as well as getting feedback from people in the class using the class blog and face-to-face, we also took advantage of Google Hangouts to try and fix students up with experts where we could find experts who knew a little bit about their artifacts or the research that they were doing. There were various other things, again, I'll skip over some of them to keep it quite brief. And when we get to the show section, we used video to record the presentations that students did initially when they were practicing them so they could watch them back and refine them and improve them and build their confidence up. We also tried to put evidence of the products that students created onto Twitter, and we made a Weebly site which collected all the products together to give students a global audience for these things. And for assessment, we developed a tool called Sparkbook, which allowed us to collect different evidence from each of these phases as the work progressed, and obviously use that to assess how students were doing, give them feedback, and allow them the chance to respond to that feedback to improve. But you don't have to develop an in-house tool for something like this. You could just as easily use Google Docs and have some kind of ongoing journal that students keep. You could use Google Sites and put together an e-portfolio and use the comments on there. Tools now like Doctopus and Gubrick are also very good ways of doing this. So I hope that just gives you a flavour of how we've built the technology into a unit and not allowed the technology to dictate the learning, but used it as something to enhance it. And thanks for watching.